May ever try to make sense of a major public figure just by looking at their social media? It's like trying to drink from a fire hose, right? You've got company news, you've got political battles, grand philosophical ideas, all crashing into each other on one single timeline. But what if that chaos is actually the whole point? Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to dissect just one single 24-hour period from Elon Musk's feed and see what we can learn from the noise.
So let's get specific. The day is April 26th, and on that one day, Elon Musk posted or reposted 35 times. That's a lot. We're going to break down the biggest themes from that flood of content, from pushing his products to talking about the cosmos, to really get a feel for the world he's presenting on his feed, and maybe even the strategy behind it all.
All right, so where do you even start with all that? Well, let's begin on some familiar ground, his main companies. It's probably no surprise that a big chunk of what he does online is just amplifying good news and positive reviews about his biggest projects. You could say this is kind of the bedrock of his whole feed, right? It establishes his identity as a guy who builds things.
First up, Tesla. He reposted this user review of the newest full self-driving beta, and it is glowing, to say the least. Now, this is a classic Musk move, isn't it? He uses raw, unfiltered feedback from a customer as this super powerful endorsement. It completely skips the traditional media and lets a happy customer make the sales pitch for him.
And then we pivot over to SpaceX. And here, he's not just sharing an update on a project. He's framing the entire mission in the biggest, most epic terms you can imagine. This isn't just a comment about a rocket. It's a declaration about its place in history. And that theme, it's really the justification for everything else we're about to dive into.
Okay, so we go from promotion, and then the feed takes a pretty sharp turn into confrontation. A theme you see over and over again is him directly fighting back against media criticism. And on this particular day, the bullseye was on the New York Times. And this isn't just him being defensive. It's a deliberate play to rally his supporters against what he frames as a common enemy.
So this was the headline that kicked things off. The story was about his financial strategy. Taking out loans against his shares in one company to fund another. But the article used this really loaded term, piggy bank, which of course makes it sound like something shady is going on.
But here's what's interesting. Musk's first response wasn't to argue back himself. No, instead he found a user's really sarcastic take on the whole thing and just amplified it. By simply adding the word bullseye, he lets a supporter reframe the criticism as totally absurd, making his defense feel, way more grassroots.
But he didn't just leave it at that. After letting his supporter make the argument, he followed up with his own direct and incredibly blunt opinion. So you see what happened? It's this 1-2 punch. It's not just about winning a single argument, it's about trying to tear down the credibility of any institution that criticizes him.
All right, now we're going to shift into what was probably the most heated topic of the day. After a shooting incident, Musk's feed essentially became an arena for a really raw, really polarized debate about political violence in America. And it's a fascinating look at how he hosts the exact conversation he wants people to see.
So this was one of the first takes he decided to amplify. It's a really direct claim from Matt Walsh, who says that political violence comes squarely from one side of the aisle. He even goes so far as to call them the party of terrorism. There is no ambiguity here.
And then, almost immediately after, the feed shows you the exact polar opposite view, this time from Joe Walsh, who makes the completely opposite claim, and he also says all the data proves his point. So by putting both of these up, back to back, he creates this head-on collision of two narratives that just can't both be true, positioning his platform as the place for the fight.
And then comes the third layer. This post doesn't just take a side, it attacks the data itself, claiming it's being manipulated to get a certain result. And this is the moment where Musk shows his own hand. He boosts this analysis with just one word, exactly. It's a really subtle but super powerful way for him to act as the referee in the very debate he's staging, and to nudge his audience toward the conclusion he agrees with.
So, moving away from breaking news, Musk also spent part of the day amplifying these bigger critiques of how major systems work. This helps build that narrative of him being an outsider, fighting against a broken and self-serving establishment, whether that's the media, nonprofits, or government.
For example, he reposted this theory from the investor David Sachs. The basic idea is that these mission-driven organizations always, inevitably, end up caring more about their own survival than about the cause they were started for. And by adding his own comment, accurate, he's clearly siding with people who are skeptical of these big institutions.
He also shared this long thread that was breaking down a proposed billionaire tax in California. The whole argument he's platforming here is that this tax is basically a Trojan horse. It's being sold as a tax on a few super rich people, but the thread alleges it's written in a way that it can be expanded to everyone later.
It's another piece of content that claims to be revealing a hidden truth that the establishment is trying to pull over on you.
Okay, and for our last section, this is where all these different threats, the business plugs, the media fights, the political arguments, all seem to funnel down into one big idea. This is the core philosophy that Musk claims is the engine for everything he does, securing a multiplanetary future for humanity. It's the grand story that's meant to give all that other chaos a higher purpose.
In a clip he shared, Musk boils his entire worldview down to just 3 words: a philosophy of curiosity. When you frame it like that, it elevates his work from just running companies to this noble, optimistic search for knowledge. And let's be honest, that's a much more compelling story than just saying you build cars and rockets.
He then basically lays out this stark choice for humanity. As you can see here, path 1 is we stay on Earth, a single planet species, always just one disaster away from extinction. Path 2, we become multiplanetary, and he frames this as the only logical way to make sure consciousness itself survives in the long run.
And he capped off the day by making this vision feel incredibly urgent. To him, this isn't some science fiction dream for the distant future. He's saying this is a very brief window of opportunity that has only just opened up in the entire 4.5 billion year history of our planet. The stakes, as he lays them out, literally could not be any higher.
So that's it. That was one day. In just 35 posts, we saw it all. Company praise, media fights, intense political debate, and then this final grand vision for where humanity is headed. And it leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? After seeing all of that, what do you think is the real signal and what's just the noise?